Princess Nari stood in the small preparation room and looked at herself in the mirror. Her ceremonial robes were beautiful, made of silver fabric that changed colors in the light. She had spent 3 hours getting ready for this moment. Her long black hair was braided with golden threads. Her face was painted with the traditional marks of Velcarian royalty. But none of it mattered. She knew what was coming. Today was her selection ceremony. Today, representatives from hundreds of worlds would decide if she was worth forming an alliance with. Her 3 older siblings had all been chosen quickly. Her eldest brother Ki-hyun had 5 different species competing to form a bond with him. Her sisters had been chosen within minutes. But Nari knew she would be different. She touched the small picture she kept hidden in her robes. It showed her mother, Empress Somin, smiling and holding a baby. Nari had never met her mother. Somin had died bringing Nari into the world 19 years ago, and the Velcarian people had never forgiven Nari for it. The Velcarians were telepathic. They could read thoughts and feel emotions from others, but they were also deeply superstitious. When the beloved Empress died in childbirth, the whispers began. The youngest princess was cursed. She brought bad luck. Anyone who formed an alliance with her would suffer. It did not matter that Nari had done nothing wrong. It did not matter that she was kind and smart and had spent years studying everything she could about the galaxy. All that mattered was the curse. A soft chime rang. It was time. Nari took a deep breath and walked toward the door. She would face this with dignity. That was all she had left. Far across the station, in a different part of Apex Prime, Ambassador Hyun was getting ready too. He adjusted his formal Earth uniform and checked his appearance. This was his first major diplomatic event since becoming humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. He wanted to make a good impression. Captain Taemin entered the room. He was Hyun's oldest friend and commanded the small fleet of Earth ships that protected human interests in this sector. Taemin looked worried. "Are you sure you want to attend this ceremony?" Taemin asked. "It is very political, very complicated. We are still new to the council. Maybe we should just observe from a distance." Hyun shook his head. "We need to understand these traditions if we want to succeed out here. The selection ceremony is important to the royal families. We should show respect by attending." Taemin sighed. "Just remember, we are guests here. We cannot afford to make enemies. Earth is still seen as primitive by most species. We have to be careful." Hyun knew his friend was right. Humanity had only made first contact with the galactic community 15 years ago. Most species had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. They saw humans as children playing at politics. Every move Earth made was watched and judged. They walked together to the Grand Conclave Hall. Hyun had never seen anything like it. The hall was enormous, with a ceiling so high it seemed to touch the stars. Seats rose up in circles around a central floor like an ancient amphitheater. Representatives from 100 worlds sat waiting. Some were humanoid, others were nothing like any creature from Earth. There were beings made of crystalline structures, floating clouds of gas held together by energy fields, and creatures that existed partially in other dimensions. Hyun and Taemin took their seats in the diplomatic gallery. The ceremony began. One by one, young royals entered the hall. Each one stood in the center while representatives decided whether to approach them. When a representative approached, it meant they wanted to form an alliance between their people and the royals' family. It was a way to create peace, trade agreements, and political bonds that could last for generations. Most of the young royals were chosen quickly. Some had multiple offers. The crowd would applaud, and the chosen royal would leave with their new allies to begin negotiations. Then Princess Nari entered the hall. Hyun noticed her immediately. She was small compared to most Velcarians, and she moved with careful grace. Her robes shimmered as she walked to the center of the hall. She stood there, her hands folded, her face calm, and she waited. No one moved. Hyun leaned toward Taemin. "Why is no one approaching her?" he whispered. Taemin had been reading about Velkarian customs. "I heard rumors. She is the youngest daughter. Her mother died when she was born. The Velkarians believe she is cursed. No one wants to risk an alliance with her." Hyun watched the princess. She stood perfectly still, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. He could see the way her jaw was set, as if she was holding back pain. Minutes passed. The silence in the hall became heavy and uncomfortable. Some representatives whispered to each other. Others looked away. Finally, a bell rang. The traditional waiting period was over. Princess Nari had received no offers. She turned and walked out of the hall, her head high, her steps steady. But Hyun saw something in her eyes as she passed near the gallery. It was not defeat. It was a deep, quiet sadness that came from years of rejection. The ceremony continued with other royals, but Hyun could not focus. He kept thinking about the princess who had been left standing alone. That evening, there was a celebration for all the newly formed alliances. Prince Ki-hyun, the eldest Velkarian prince, hosted the event. His palace suite was filled with diplomats and nobles. Music played and expensive food was served. Everyone was laughing and celebrating. Hyun attended out of duty, but he felt uncomfortable. The celebration felt wrong after what he had witnessed. Prince Ki-hyun stood and raised his glass. He was tall and handsome, with the confident smile of someone who had never known rejection. "A toast," he called out, "to the wisdom of our honored guests. Thank you for recognizing quality bloodlines and avoiding those that bring misfortune. May your alliances be prosperous and uncursed." The crowd laughed and drank. Hyun did not. He looked around the room and noticed that Princess Nari was not present. Of course she was not. This was a celebration of everything she had been denied. Taemin touched Hyun's arm. "We should leave soon. You look angry, and people are noticing." "I am angry," Hyun said quietly. "This is cruel. That prince just mocked his own sister in front of everyone." "It is their culture, not ours," Taemin warned. "Do not get involved in alien politics. Especially when we are so vulnerable. If you offend the Velkarian Empire, it could hurt all of humanity's position on the council." Hyun said nothing, but his mind was working. Something about this situation felt deeply wrong. He had seen prejudice before. He had seen people judged unfairly because of things they could not control. Earth itself had been judged that way by the galactic community. Humans were too violent, too emotional, too young. Every day, Hyun had to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Looking at how the Velkarians treated their own princess, Hyun felt a connection. She was being judged for something that was not her fault, just like humanity. That night, Hyun could not sleep. He sat in his quarters and accessed Earth's database of galactic cultures. He started reading everything he could find about the Velkarian Empire. There had to be more to this story than superstition. As he read, pieces began to fall into place. The Velkarians were telepathic, but their royal family had the weakest telepathic abilities of all their people. This was seen as a good thing. A ruler who could not read minds had to listen to their people and make decisions based on wisdom, not on thoughts they stole from others. Then Hyun found information about Empress Somin, Princess Nari's mother. She had been a reformer. She had argued that people should be judged by their actions and abilities, not by their birth or their family connections. She had wanted to change laws that gave too much power to the noble houses. Many nobles had hated her for it, and she had died giving birth to her youngest daughter. Hyun sat back in his chair. Suddenly, the pieces fit together. Princess Nari was not cursed. She was politically inconvenient. She was a reminder of her mother's ideas that threatened the power structure of the Velkarian Empire. The curse was a convenient excuse to push her aside and make sure she never gained influence. But there was something else in the records. Information about Princess Nari herself. She had been educated by the finest tutors. She had studied xenobiology and comparative cultures. She spoke 12 galactic languages. She had written several academic papers on cultural diplomacy, though they had been published under fake names because of her cursed status. Hyun realized something important. This rejected princess had exactly the kind of knowledge that humanity desperately needed. Earth was struggling in the Galactic Council because humans did not understand all the complex rules, the ancient grudges between species, the cultural expectations that everyone else took for granted. An alliance with someone who understood all of that would be incredibly valuable. But more than that, Hyun saw a chance to do something right, to stand up for someone who had been treated unfairly, to show that humans judged people by their character, not by superstition. He started researching the rules of the selection ceremony. There had to be a way to fix this. The next morning, Hyun requested a meeting with Chancellor Borath, the head of the Galactic Council. Borath was a reptilian creature from a very old and respected species. He was known for being strict about following the law. They met in a formal office overlooking the stars. Borath settled his large body into a specially designed chair and fixed his golden eyes on Hyun. "Ambassador Hyun," Borath said in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. "What can I do for humanity today?" "I want to know about the selection ceremony," Hyun said, "specifically about rejected royals. Is there any way to request a second ceremony?" Borath's eyes widened slightly. For his species, that was a sign of great surprise. "That is a very unusual question. May I ask why you want to know?" "I am trying to understand all the options available in galactic diplomacy," Hyun said carefully. "Earth is new to these traditions. I want to make sure we are not missing opportunities because of our ignorance." Borath studied him for a long moment. "You are asking about the Valkyrian princess. Everyone saw what happened yesterday. It was unfortunate, but these things occur. Some royal bloodlines are seen as unlucky. But is there a way to challenge that?" Hyun pressed. "A way to request a second ceremony?" Borath sighed. "Technically, yes. It is in the ancient laws, though it has not been used in over 3,000 years. A council representative can request a second selection ceremony if they can provide compelling reason. But it is considered very insulting to all the representatives who rejected the royal the first time. It suggests they made a mistake. What would be a compelling reason?" "The law lists 3 traditional justifications," Borath explained. "New evidence of the royal's worthiness, proof that the rejection was based on false information, or demonstration that the royal possesses a quality essential to the requesting species' survival that went unrecognized." Hyun leaned forward. "And if someone could demonstrate that third option? Then I would be bound by law to convene a second ceremony," Borath said. "But Ambassador, I must warn you, if you are thinking what I believe you are thinking, this would be very dangerous. The Valkyrian Empire is powerful. Emperor Daishik is proud. If you insult him by bringing attention back to his rejected daughter, there could be consequences for Earth." "I understand the risks," Hyun said. Borath looked at him with something that might have been respect. "You humans are either very brave or very foolish. I have not yet decided which." That afternoon, Hyun did something that broke several diplomatic protocols. He went to the Valkyrian embassy and requested a private meeting with Princess Nari herself. The Valkyrian guards were shocked. No one asked to meet with the cursed princess. But Hyun was a council representative, and they could not refuse him without causing an incident. After making him wait for 2 hours, they finally escorted him to a small garden on the embassy grounds. Princess Nari was sitting on a stone bench, reading from a data tablet. She looked up when Hyun approached, and he saw surprise on her face. "Ambassador Hyun," she said, standing and giving a formal bow. "This is unexpected. I apologize, but I do not have the authority to conduct diplomatic negotiations. You should speak with my father or my brother." "I am not here for negotiations," Hyun said. "I wanted to speak with you personally." She looked confused. "Why?" Hyun sat down on the bench and gestured for her to sit as well. After a moment's hesitation, she did. "I am going to ask you a question," Hyun said, "and I need you to answer honestly. Do you want to be seen for who you actually are? Do you want a chance to prove your worth? Or would you prefer the peace of exile away from all of this?" Nari stared at him. No one had ever asked her what she wanted. Her whole life had been decided by other people, by superstition and politics and fear. "I do not understand," she said quietly. "Why would you care what I want?" "Because I saw what happened yesterday," Hyun said. "I saw how they treated you. And I think it was wrong. Not just politically wrong, morally wrong." Tears formed in Nari's eyes, but she blinked them away. "You do not know me, Ambassador. You do not know if I am worth defending." "Then tell me," Hyun said. "Tell me about yourself, not about your curse or your family. Tell me about you." And so she did. Sitting in that quiet garden, Princess Nari talked about her life. She told him about spending years in the archives, learning about every species in the council. She told him about her studies in xenobiology, about the academic papers she had written under false names because no one would publish work from a cursed princess. She told him about learning 12 languages because she wanted to understand how different species thought and communicated. She told him about her mother's ideas, about reform and judging people by their actions instead of their birth. Hyun listened to everything, and as she talked, he became more certain that his plan was right. "I read some of your papers," he admitted, "the ones about cultural diplomacy. They were brilliant. You understand the council better than anyone I have met." Nari looked shocked. "You read my work. But how did you know it was mine?" "I did a lot of research last night," Hyun said with a small smile. "Princess Nari, humanity needs what you have. We are struggling in the council because we do not understand all the rules and traditions. We make mistakes because we do not know about ancient conflicts or cultural expectations. An alliance with someone who does understand all of that would be invaluable to Earth." "But I am cursed," she said softly. "An alliance with me would bring you bad luck." "We do not believe in curses," Hyun said. "We believe in judging people by their character and their abilities. And I believe that you have been judged unfairly, just as humanity has been judged unfairly as too primitive and too young to matter in galactic politics." He stood up and looked at her seriously. "I want to request a second selection ceremony for you, and when you enter that hall again, I want to be the one who chooses you, an alliance between you and humanity." Nari stood as well, her hands shaking. "Do you understand what you are saying? My father would be furious. My brother would see it as an insult. And the other representatives who rejected me would be offended. This could create enemies for Earth." "I know," Hyun said. "But sometimes doing the right thing is more important than avoiding enemies. Sometimes you have to stand up for what is right, even when it is dangerous." "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you risk so much for me?" Hyun thought about his answer carefully. "Because 15 years ago, humanity was alone in the universe. We thought we were the only intelligent life. Then we made first contact, and we discovered we were wrong. We discovered a galaxy full of ancient civilizations who saw us as primitive children. We have been fighting ever since to prove we deserve respect, to prove we are worth something. I know what it feels like to be judged unfairly. I know what it feels like to stand alone while everyone else decides you are not good enough. I will not watch someone else go through that if I can help stop it." Nari looked at him for a long moment. Then she made her decision. "Request your second ceremony," she said. "I will stand in that hall again, and I will wait for you to choose me." 3 days later, Ambassador Hyun formally submitted his request to Chancellor Borath. He invoked the ancient law, claiming that Princess Nari possessed knowledge essential to humanity's survival in the Galactic Council. He provided evidence from her academic papers, testimony from scholars who had unknowingly praised her work, and a detailed argument about why cultural expertise was a survival necessity for Earth. The request created chaos. Within hours, every major news service in the galaxy was reporting the story. The human ambassador had challenged the selection ceremony. He wanted a second chance for the cursed Valkyrian princess. Emperor Daishik was furious. He sent an angry message to Earth's government, demanding that they remove Ambassador Hyun and apologize. But Earth's leaders, after reviewing Hyun's reasoning, backed his decision. They sent a message saying that Ambassador Hyun had their full support. Prince Ki-hyun tried to have the request blocked. He argued that it was an insult to the Valkyrian Empire and a violation of tradition. He lobbied with other representatives, trying to pressure them into opposing Hyun. But Chancellor Borath was bound by law. Hyun had met the requirements. He had provided compelling evidence. The ancient law was clear. A second ceremony had to be granted. The second selection ceremony for Princess Nari of the Valkyrian Empire will be held in 3 days, Borath announced officially, as the law requires. Those 3 days were tense. Captain Taemin increased security around the human embassy. There were reports of protests outside the Valkyrian embassy. Some species supported Hyun's challenge. Others saw it as humans overstepping their place in galactic politics. Nari spent the 3 days preparing herself mentally. Advisor Minji, her elderly tutor and only real friend, helped her stay calm. "Are you afraid?" Minji asked. "Terrified," Nari admitted. "What if no one else supports him? What if he stands alone and gets hurt for choosing me?" "Then at least one person in this galaxy saw your worth," Minji said gently. "That is more than you had before." Finally, the day of the second ceremony arrived. The Grand Conclave Hall was even more crowded than before. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Would the human really choose the cursed princess? Would anyone else join him? Princess Nari entered the hall wearing the same silver robes. She walked to the center and stood in the same spot where she had been rejected before. But this time felt different. This time, she was not alone. She knew someone was waiting to stand with her. The hall was silent. Every being in the room watched to see what would happen. Ambassador Hyun stood up from his seat in the diplomatic gallery. The movement drew every eye to him. Slowly, clearly, he walked down the steps from the gallery. His footsteps echoed in the massive hall. He crossed the floor, passing representatives from hundreds of worlds. And he stopped directly in front of Princess Nari. In flawless Valkyrian, Hyun spoke the ancient words of alliance. "I see your worth. I offer my people's bond. Will you stand with humanity?" Nari looked at him, tears streaming down her face. She spoke the traditional response. "I will stand with humanity." The hall erupted. Some species applauded. Others shouted in anger. The Valkyrian delegation sat frozen in shock. Emperor Daishik's face was red with rage, but Prince Ki-hyun looked worried. He understood what this meant. His cursed sister had just become politically important. Chancellor Borath stood and raised his voice to be heard over the noise. "The alliance is witnessed and recorded. It is binding under galactic law. Princess Nari and Ambassador Hyun, you have 3 days to formalize the terms of your bond." Hyun bowed to Nari. She bowed back. Then together they walked out of the Grand Conclave Hall. The formalization of the alliance took 2 weeks, not 3 days. There were endless meetings, negotiations, and legal documents. Emperor Dashik tried to add restrictions, but Chancellor Borath enforced the law strictly. An alliance formed through the selection ceremony could not be controlled by the royal family. It was a bond between the princess and the chosen people. Finally, everything was settled. Princess Nari would serve as humanity's cultural liaison. She would live on Earth and work with their diplomatic corps. She would teach them about galactic politics and help them navigate the complex web of alliances and traditions. In exchange, Earth would provide her with protection, resources, and a place to belong. The day came for Nari to leave for Earth. She said goodbye to advisor Minji in private. "Thank you," Nari said, holding her old teacher's hands. "For everything, for believing in me when no one else did." "I will miss you," Minji said, crying. "But I am so proud of you." "Your mother would have been proud too." Nari boarded the human ship with Ambassador Hyun and Captain Taemin. As the ship left Apex Prime, she looked out the window at the stars. She was leaving behind everything she had ever known. Her home, her empire, her family. But she did not feel sad. She felt free. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks using the standard hyperspace lanes. Nari spent the time learning about humanity. She read their history, watched their entertainment, and talked with the crew. She was fascinated by human culture. They were so emotional, so passionate, so chaotic. They fought with each other constantly, but also showed incredible kindness. They had barely been in space for a century, but they had already accomplished so much. "We are not like other species," Captain Taemin explained one evening. "We do not have telepathy or advanced technology. We do not have the wisdom of thousands of years. All we have is stubbornness and hope. We refuse to give up, and we believe things can get better." "That is more than many species have," Nari said. When they finally arrived at Earth, Nari stood at the window and stared in wonder. The planet was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked nothing like the harsh red deserts of her home world. The ship landed at a spaceport outside Earth's United Nations headquarters. As Nari stepped off the ship, she was greeted by dozens of human officials. They bowed to her respectfully. Some of them looked curious, others looked excited. None of them looked afraid or disgusted. No one whispered about curses. Over the next few months, Princess Nari settled into her new life. She worked with Earth's diplomatic corps, teaching them everything she knew about the Galactic Council. Her insights were incredibly valuable. She explained why certain species preferred indirect communication. She warned them about ancient conflicts that still caused tension. She taught them how to read the subtle body language of non-humanoid species. Earth's standing in the Council began to improve. Human diplomats made fewer mistakes. Their proposals were better received. Other species started taking humanity more seriously. Nari also discovered something she had never had before: friends. Real friends who chose to spend time with her because they enjoyed her company. Human colleagues invited her to meals, asked her opinion on things, included her in their jokes and conversations. She was not a cursed princess anymore. She was just Nari, the brilliant cultural expert who happened to be from another world. One evening, Ambassador Hyun found her sitting alone on a balcony, looking at the stars. "Are you homesick?" he asked. Nari shook her head. "I am realizing that I never had a home before. Not really. I had a place where I lived, but I did not belong there. Here I belong. These people chose me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to." "We are lucky to have you," Hyun said. "I am lucky to have been chosen," Nari replied. 6 months after the alliance was formed, everything changed again. A diplomatic crisis erupted between the Galactic Council and an aggressive species called the Rathak Dominion. The Rathak wanted to expand their territory, and they did not care about the old treaties. War seemed inevitable. The council held an emergency session. Every species sent their best diplomats. The tension in the meeting hall was overwhelming. Species that normally worked together were arguing. Ancient alliances were fracturing under the pressure. Princess Nari attended the session as part of Earth's delegation. She watched the chaos and realized something. The council was failing because no one understood each other anymore. They were all speaking, but no one was listening. They were focused on their own interests and forgetting how to find common ground. She leaned over to Ambassador Hyun. "Let me try something." Before he could respond, Nari stood up and walked to the center of the hall. The arguing stopped. Everyone stared at her. The cursed princess who had been rejected now stood at the center of galactic politics. "I know I am young," Nari began, speaking in the common galactic language that everyone understood. "I know that many of you rejected me. I know that I come from a bloodline some believe is cursed. But I have spent my entire life studying all of you, your cultures, your histories, your values, and I see something that you have all forgotten." She turned slowly, making eye contact with representatives from different species. "You are afraid, all of you. The Rathak are aggressive, and you do not know how to stop them without war. But you are also afraid of each other. You do not trust anyone because you remember old conflicts and old betrayals. So you argue instead of working together." A representative from a crystalline species spoke up. "What would you have us do, Princess? Ignore the threat?" "No," Nari said. "Face it together. But to do that, you must remember what you have in common instead of focusing on your differences. The Rothak are counting on you being divided. They believe the council is weak because you cannot work together anymore. Prove them wrong." She spent the next 3 hours facilitating a different kind of discussion. She helped each species explain their concerns in ways that others could understand. She pointed out common interests. She reminded them of past collaborations that had succeeded. She broke down the communication barriers that had made cooperation impossible. Slowly, the mood in the hall changed. Species that had been shouting at each other began to listen. Compromises were suggested. A plan began to form. The council would present a united front to the Rathak. They would show strength through cooperation. When the session ended, the crisis had been averted. The Rathak, seeing the council unified, backed down from their aggressive expansion plans. War was avoided. Chancellor Borath approached Nari as everyone was leaving. "That was impressive, Princess. You have your mother's gift for bringing people together." "Thank you, Chancellor," Nari said. News of the session spread across the galaxy. The cursed princess who had brought the council together. The rejected royal who had prevented a war. Suddenly, people started questioning the whole concept of curses. If Princess Nari was so unlucky, why did good things happen around her? Young royals on other worlds who had been rejected in their own selection ceremonies began to speak up. They pointed to Princess Nari as proof that rejection did not mean worthlessness. Reform movements started on several planets. The old system of judging royals by superstition began to crack. 1 month after the crisis, Prince Ki-hyun arrived on Earth. He came alone, without guards or ceremony. He requested a private meeting with his sister. They met in a garden at the UN complex. It was the first time they had spoken since before Nari left the Velkarian Empire. "Father sent me," Ki-hyun said stiffly. "He wants you to return home. He says he made a mistake. You could have influence in the Empire now. Power. A place on the ruling council." Nari looked at her brother calmly. "Why does he want me back now?" "Because you have become important," Ki-hyun admitted. "The other species respect you. An alliance with you could benefit the Empire." "I see," Nari said. "So when I was worthless, I was cursed. Now that I am valuable, the curse has disappeared." "How convenient." Ki-hyun had the grace to look uncomfortable. I never believed in the curse, he said quietly. But it was easier to go along with it. I am sorry, Nari. I should have stood up for you. Yes, you should have, Nari agreed. But you did not. Ambassador Hyun did. A stranger from a species we barely knew showed me more kindness in one day than my own family showed me in 19 years. So you will not return? I serve Earth now, Nari said firmly. My loyalty is not for sale. You can tell Father that his youngest daughter has found her place, and it is not with him. Ki-hyun nodded slowly. He looked sad. I understand. I hope someday you can forgive us. Maybe someday, Nari said, but not today. After he left, Ambassador Hyun found Nari still sitting in the garden. That looked difficult, he said, sitting beside her. It was, Nari admitted, but it also felt right. I stood up for myself. I chose my own path. You did, Hyun agreed, and I am honored that the path you chose led you to us. Nari smiled. Do you ever regret it, standing up in that hall, challenging the ceremony? It created a lot of problems for humanity. Hyun shook his head. Not for a second. You have given us so much. Knowledge, insight, friendship. But more than that, you reminded us why we are out here. We came to the stars not to conquer or dominate, but to learn and connect, to be part of something bigger. Choosing you was the best decision I ever made. 2 years after the alliance was formed, the Galactic Council held another selection ceremony. Among the young royals being presented was Princess Jisoo from a small empire called the Domari. She was the youngest of 4 daughters. Her family had very little wealth or influence. Princess Jisoo stood in the center of the Grand Conclave Hall and waited. Minutes passed. No one approached. She was about to be rejected, just as Princess Nari had been. But then a human ambassador named Sora stood up. Slowly, she walked down from the diplomatic gallery, crossed the floor, and stood before Princess Jisoo. In careful Domari, Ambassador Sora spoke the ancient words. I see your worth. I offer my people's bond. Will you stand with humanity? Princess Jisoo, tears in her eyes, responded, I will stand with humanity. As they walked out of the hall together, Princess Nari watched from the diplomatic gallery. She was attending as Earth's senior cultural liaison now. She saw herself in that young princess. She saw the moment when everything changed. Ambassador Hyun sat beside her. It is spreading, he said quietly. The idea that being rejected does not mean being worthless, that everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. Because you showed them it was possible, Nari said. Because you chose me when no one else would. No. Hyun corrected gently. Because you proved that the choice was right. You did that, Nari. You showed the galaxy that their superstitions were wrong. They watched as Princess Jisoo left with her new allies. The cycle was continuing, humans choosing those who had been rejected, giving them chances no one else would, and in doing so, humanity was building something new. Not alliances based on power or politics, but connections based on seeing potential, where others saw only problems. That evening, Nari returned to her apartment in the UN complex. She kept it simple, decorated with things from both Earth and her home world. On her desk was the old picture of her mother, Empress Somin. Beside it was a new picture from the day she arrived on Earth, showing her with Ambassador Hyun, Captain Taemin, and the diplomatic corps. She looked at both pictures and smiled. Her mother had wanted a world where people were judged by their actions, not their birth. That dream had not happened on the Valkyrian homeworld, but maybe, with humanity's help, it could happen across the galaxy. Princess Nari had been rejected, cursed, and forgotten. But then a human entered the hall and changed everything. Not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been told they were not good enough. The galaxy was slowly learning what humans already knew. That worth was not decided by superstition or tradition. It was decided by courage, kindness, and the willingness to stand up and be counted. And it all started with one choice. One human who looked at a rejected princess and saw not a curse, but a person deserving of dignity and respect. That choice had rippled across the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same.